I'm Ruth Bartolo, registered dietitian with LivWell Community Health Services. Today we're going to talk about some different soups, and we're actually going to do a demonstration making a pasta Fagioli soup, which is super easy. It's very cost effective. The one we're making today is no meat containing, but there's different variations we can do. So it's super simple to get started with. We're just going to have some pasta. This time we're going to choose a whole grain. I have a penne pasta this time. Any small shape would work well. We have some chicken broth. We're using a low sodium or less sodium variety this time because typically most of us could use a little less salt in our diet. We're using just some canned white beans, Italian seasoning, olive oil, garlic, tomatoes, and then the key ingredient here is some frozen vegetables. And this one, it just happens to be some Italian style vegetables to give us a little variety. It has cucumbers, carrots, cauliflower, all kinds of good different things, and some Italian beans in it. So to get started, I just have my pot on medium heat. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna add just a little bit of olive oil to the pot so we can saute our garlic. I have just about a tablespoon in there, and then I have just one large clove of garlic. And we're just gonna let that saute until fragrant, about 30 seconds to a minute. And then one of the other things I really like to do when making soups, and this is kind of my little trick here, and when we make soups, typically we start to add our ingredients after either our onion and or garlic are transparent and sauteed. I like to add my seasonings first before I add anything that contain liquid. That helps kind of release some of the flavors, especially because today we're using just a dried Italian seasoning. That's really gonna help release some of that aroma and that flavor to make our soup really have a good punch to it. So our garlic has a nice golden color to it, so we're ready to go ahead and add our seasoning. I have just a tablespoon of Italian seasoning. Stir that in. And when we stir in our seasonings, when we're sauteing, typically it starts to look like a paste pretty quickly, but you'll start to smell them start to release that scent fairly quickly as well. So I'm smelling that scent. So now we can go ahead with some of our other ingredients. I just have one can of white beans. We have cannellini beans. There's also different varieties. Great Northern would work fine. Any kind of white bean works well in the soup. We're gonna add 2 cups of broth, and like I said, this broth is low sodium or reduced sodium. We're gonna add our frozen vegetables here. This is just an Italian variety. We're gonna add 2 cups of tomatoes, and our tomatoes, it's about 3 tomatoes chopped is what that ended up being for us. I'm using fresh tomatoes today because they're still in season and were a good price at the grocery store. But of course in the fall time, tomatoes start to be a little higher price and a little lower quality, so you can most certainly sub that for a canned tomato. That would work lovely in this soup as well. I typically like to get the petite diced if I was going to sub out for a variety of tomato. Get that nice and incorporated, mixed up, and then we just have 1 cup of pasta, and I've chosen a whole grain rotini. So when we're adding that whole grain, we're adding that fiber and getting those extra B vitamins into our meal here. So this is just gonna get brought to a boil. Once it's boiling, then we'll cover it, and it only has to cook for about 10 minutes. We're just softening everything. The vegetables are just frozen, so they need to be thawed, and then we're just making sure that our pasta is cooked thoroughly. With a penne noodle, it's probably about 8 to 12 minutes once it reaches boiling. What's really great about soups this time of year is they're really versatile. They're a really budget-friendly option. They're pretty nice and easy to make a substitution if you have different health concerns, if you're watching your sodium or watching your carbohydrates. There's all kinds of ways to take one recipe and kind of put your own spin on it. I really like this one. It's very cost effective, and it didn't have any meat in it. We did have some chicken broth in it, but otherwise we're still getting a good source of protein from our vegetables that are contained within it and our beans. Beans are an excellent source of protein, fiber, and minerals. And then we have our whole grain pasta as well. So this is gonna be a really hearty soup, fairly low calorie and very minimal fat because we're only using a small amount of oil to saute that with. Another thing I really like about this particular recipe is that, notice that it made a normal sized pot of soup. Sometimes when we make soup, our recipes tend to be 1 can of this, 1 can of that, and before you know it, you have a giant, huge container of soup, which is lovely, but sometimes you feel like you're eating soup for days and days upon end. So this is a nice one that it's not too large of a volume, especially if you're cooking for just 1 or 2. It makes a good amount of soup, but not to where you feel like you're married to the soup and have to commit to a relationship with that soup for 4 to 5 days afterwards. Another great thing that I like about this is it uses a variety of fresh ingredients, frozen ingredients, and canned ingredients. Canned ingredients ingredients are really budget friendly, as well as our frozen vegetables. We still were able to use some regular fresh tomatoes because they were still in season. Again, if we were talking another week or two and later, or a little later in October, that might not be the case, since canned would be a good substitution as well. Again, I hope you really enjoyed this recipe. Let me know what you think about it. I look forward to hearing what you guys are making this fall for your soups. Have a great day. Thanks.